Money. It's a topic that can bring up a lot of feelings, and for so many of us, one of the biggest ones is worry. It's kind of like that little bit of background static that can sometimes get really, really loud. So let's dive into this, because that feeling, it's more than just a feeling. It has a real, measurable impact on our minds. You know the one I'm talking about, right? That sudden, sinking feeling when an unexpected expense just pops up, or when you're looking at your budget and things just feel tight. It's a universal experience, and today we're going to unpack exactly what's going on inside our heads when that happens.
And look, this isn't just a hunch. A recent study published in the Journal of Family and Economic Issues took a really deep dive into this exact connection. And what they found was a significant statistical link between how much we worry about our finances and our level of psychological distress. It's real.
So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start with the science behind that worry. Then we'll look at who the research says is most vulnerable. After that, we'll shift gears from the problem to the solution, digging into a playbook of real-world tips from a community forum. We'll get into some super practical savings, and finally, we'll tie it all together into what you might call financial self-care.
First up, the science. Because to really get a handle on this, we need to understand what we're dealing with. And you know, what the research makes brilliantly clear is that this isn't just about the amount of money sitting in your bank account. It's deeper than that.
The study measured something they call psychological distress. So let's be super clear on what that means. We're not just talking about feeling a bit down. It's a state of emotional suffering that actually includes symptoms of anxiety and depression. Think of it as the mental health fallout from being exposed to a major stressor. And in this case, that stressor is financial worry.
Now, here's where the researchers made a really fascinating distinction. They looked at two things. On one hand, you've got objective strain, the cold, hard facts of your finances. But on the other hand, you've got subjective worries, your perception, your feelings, your anxiety about those facts. And the study found that this subjective part, the worry itself, is incredibly powerful.
And this isn't a totally new idea. The study builds on earlier work. This quote they cited from a 2010 paper just drives it home. Our perception of hardship can actually be more damaging to our mental health than the actual numbers on a spreadsheet. It's how we internalize the stress that truly matters.
So, if this link between worry and distress is real, does it affect everyone equally? Well, the study looks right into that, and the findings? They paint a very detailed picture.
So the researchers found that while, the connection exists for everyone, it was significantly stronger for specific groups. The data showed a much tighter association for people who are unmarried, unemployed, in lower-income households, and for those who rent their homes instead of owning them.
And this chart really just visualizes that difference when it comes to employment. The number you see there, it's just a way to measure the strength of that link between worry and distress. For employed people, it's about 0.24, but for the unemployed, it jumps up to nearly 0.33. That is a huge leap, and it shows just how much being unemployed can crank up the mental impact of financial worry.
So basically, these factors, like being unemployed or having a lower income, they act like risk multipliers. They take that baseline stress of financial worry and just turn up the volume, making its negative effect on a person's mental well-being even worse. They kind of represent a lack of a safety net or a buffer against that stress.
Okay, so we have the science, we understand the problem and who it hits the hardest, but what do we actually do about it? This is where we pivot from the academic research to real-world, practical action.
This is the big question, right? It's one thing to know that worry is harmful, but it's a whole other thing to figure out how to reduce the financial strain that's fueling that worry in the first place.
To answer that, we actually moved away from the scientific paper and over to a community forum on Reddit, where people share their absolute best tips for cutting down on bills. Think of this as the wisdom of the crowd. Practical, tested advice from people who are right there in the trenches dealing with this every single day.
All right, let's get into the specifics. What are some of these small changes that can actually add up to a big impact, not just on your wallet, but on your peace of mind?
A huge topic was home heating. One person mentioned turning their boiler's output temperature down from 78 to 65 degrees, a small change that can make a huge difference. Other simple tips? Bleeding your radiators to make them more efficient, using thick curtains as insulation, and even using a dehumidifier, which actually makes a room feel warmer and heat up faster. Who knew? And that leads to another great theme. Why heat a whole house when you can just heat yourself? The community suggested all these low-cost personal heating options, like a heated blanket for your bed or a heated throw for when you're on the sofa or working. Even something as simple as fingerless gloves got a shout-out for keeping warm while you still need to type or work.
Oh, I love this piece of advice because it highlights a totally different way of thinking.
This person realized that buying cheap slippers every single year was actually more expensive in the long run. By investing a bit more in a quality pair, they saved money and got a better product. It's all about that total cost of ownership, not just the price tag at the start.
The discussion also got into all those recurring bills. People question the need for things like a TV license if they pretty much only stream content. One person even canceled their home broadband completely and just uses an unlimited mobile data plan. And a classic but crucial tip, always shop around for things like home insurance, because the difference in price can be absolutely massive.
So, we've seen the science of worry, and we've heard the practical wisdom of the community. Let's bring it all together for the ultimate takeaway.
This is it. This is the core message. Every single one of those small tips, turning down the thermostat, buying better slippers, canceling a subscription, it's not just a financial transaction, it's an act of mental self-care. It's a way of taking back control and directly turning down the volume on that psychological distress we talked about at the very beginning.
So here's the whole process in 4 steps. First, just acknowledge that the link is real. Your financial stress has a real impact. Second, identify your own situation. Are you maybe in one of those groups with a higher risk? Third, and this is the most important part, act. Pick one of those small changes and just do it. And finally, reframe. Stop thinking of it as pinching pennies and start seeing every dollar you save as a direct investment in your own well-being and calm.
And that leaves us with a final question for you to take away. Looking at your own life, what is one small, manageable change you could make starting this week that isn't just about saving a little money, but is about actively investing in your own peace